So, if you're watching this, you're either someone with narcolepsy, know someone with narcolepsy, or you're someone who's really bored and wanted to know more about a rare condition. I wanted to make this video to let people know what it's like to live with narcolepsy. I've had a lot of people misunderstand it. I've had people tell me that it is so inconceivable to them, and that I should share my experience along this road. I have gotten better at explaining narcolepsy in particular, and I guess I've done a lot of research and a lot of internal assessment to understand it better, and hopefully it will help others that are struggling with narcolepsy. It's a really isolating condition because it is really hard to understand for people that don't have it. So yeah, what is narcolepsy? Narcolepsy is a neurological condition whereby a part of the brain called the hypocretin system, which is responsible for sleep-wake cycles, or in layman's terms, when to go to sleep and when to wake up. Yeah, that part of the brain in people with narcolepsy is compromised. It's not working properly. The way I like to think about it is the analogy of a check engine light in a car. That check engine light could be flashing. The rest of the car could be entirely fine. Even the engine could be fine. But because that alarm system is going off with that sensor, the car fails to work properly. So with narcolepsy, you've got this part of the brain saying, I need to go to sleep, I need to go to sleep, you're really tired. And you know, the consequence of that is narcolepsy, is falling asleep, is feeling tired all of the time. In narcolepsy type 1, which is the one I have, you also have paralysis of your body when you experience strong emotions. Now it's been sort of alluded to and hypothesized that the reason the paralysis happens in narcolepsy type 1 is to do with a process that happens when you sleep naturally, which is the brain will turn the body off so that you don't act out your dreams. Unfortunately, with narcolepsy type 1, that happens while you're awake. So yeah, people with cataplexy will feel a strong emotion and lose muscle tone, or I guess the ability to move certain muscles in the body. It can be the complete whole body, or you know, just the legs or the face. So it's pretty debilitating. It's scary. For me, it's traumatic, even though, you know, I know I have it. It's the impact never decreases, especially for me anyway. Some of the real difficult I guess things that a person with narcolepsy encounters is not being able to think properly. So just imagine you haven't slept for 2 days straight, and then someone asks you to solve a math equation or try and have a really in-depth connected conversation with you. And just, imagine times in your life where that has happened. You you want to tell that person to go away. You'll get really irritable, and you'll be like, just leave me alone. I'm going to go to bed. Well, that's the urge someone with narcolepsy has, 24/7, especially without coping mechanisms and certain medications. So it's really tough. It's really tough to impart and communicate that to someone that doesn't have it, because it's an invisible condition. So, I'm talking to you right now, and if I didn't tell you I had narcolepsy right now, you would say there's nothing wrong with me. But if I were to tell you right now that I'm suffering from excessive daytime sleepiness, which is the, really overwhelming urge to sleep, just by looking at me, you would say that that's probably all in my head, because, how can you be talking to me? How can you be somewhat coherent? And, that brings me to another point is, there are a lot of people with narcolepsy that are undiagnosed, and a lot of the time, they've said for years, I'm really tired. And a common response to that from family, friends, people around this person is, oh yeah, I get tired all the time too. Just have a coffee, or try and be positive. Unfortunately, someone with narcolepsy, you can say that to them, but no matter how much you try, you don't gain some more wakefulness from doing those things. You get really good at masking it and fighting through it and trying to put on a happy face, because you get used to people not believing you, and not taking what you're saying on face value, that you are really tired. It's not until it gets really bad, or you can't mask it anymore, that it becomes real. And I know for me in particular, I spent 32 years of my life struggling with this, to the point where eventually, at some point in my life, or probably my early 20s, I stopped telling people I was tired, because no one believed me. Doctors didn't believe me. They kept saying, you've got chronic fatigue, or you've got mental health issues, or maybe your diet's not great. Unfortunately, I went through that route. I went to psychologists and things like that. I actually started working in the fitness industry, and learning a lot about nutrition. I tried to improve every part of my life that people told me I should, and that it would get better, and it never did. I know for me, I would hide my sleepiness. And when I say hide my sleepiness, I developed automatic responses to questions or conversations people would have, because I couldn't have access to, the answers when I was tired. And I got really good at it. But underneath, I was struggling. Luckily, when I did get diagnosed 3 years ago, I had a look back over my life, and I remember in nearly all of the relationships I've had, partner's telling me that you act like a robot. You're very robotic, especially in times where things are highly emotional. I didn't think much of that, when I was undiagnosed, but it made sense to me after diagnosis because I simply I couldn't engage authentically and off the cuff in those situations. Also, years later, upon reflection, I was unknowingly suppressing my emotions. So much so that I learned how to respond with what would look like an emotion. I learned that really well, and I didn't realize until after diagnosis that I didn't actually know what those triggering strong emotions really felt like. I didn't have that experience because I'd gotten so good at repressing and controlling my emotions. I didn't know why. I do know that, as a child, I early on associated strong emotions and feelings to something scary was going to happen to me if I did. I didn't realize it until my sleep specialist asked me about my early life, and I remember as a child, whenever my mother would comfort me or something positive and loving would happen to me, I would experience cataplexy, which was losing control of my body and having paralysis. Now, I didn't know what that was, but I know it was scary. It was traumatic. Not being able to, as a child, being able to move, it felt just like the worst thing in the world. So, from early on as a child, I stopped allowing myself to feel the full impact of what that kind of emotion would feel like. And, unknowingly, I did that for almost my entire life. Now, there are medications now that people with narcolepsy can take. Usually when you get diagnosed, they start you off with something called modafinil, which is somewhat of a stimulant, in hopes that it will wake you up a bit. Unfortunately, with my experience and experience of others that I've talked to with narcolepsy, it really doesn't stop the sleepiness. The way I like to think of it and the way it affects me is you're still extremely tired underneath it. You're just focused. So just imagine focused, sleepy focused. That it's not great. Maybe your eyes will open up a bit more, but underneath you still feel like you want to go back to bed. And yeah, unfortunately for me in particular and some other people, the modafinil doesn't. It's not a long-term fix, and it stops working. So the next form of medication that they will try is usually Adderall. Same issue there. You end up really, really focused but sleepy, which, going back to not sleeping for 72 hours as an example, that feeling's still there, and that is soul destroying. Not only that, with stimulants, a lot of the time there are negative side effects like anxiety. For me in particular, on those medications, the anxiety was so bad that it negated any of the other benefits of taking it, to the point where it's like, okay, I'll take this drug, but now my mind is so scattered and I'm so jittery and uncomfortable. I can't even do the things, that you would think the medication would allow you to do, like go about some of your daily activities. it was nearly impossible. So, sort of the last port of call is a drug called sodium oxybate, which is it's a drug that puts your brain into only one stage of sleep, which is the deep sleep. It's kind of like tricking the brain into thinking that it has slept enough so that it can turn the, check engine light off. That's probably, I would say, the most beneficial one at the moment. Most people say it is. The only downfall is because it's not the actual full spectrum of what is required for the brain to know and think that it is slept. It only works for a short time after you wake up, and for me in particular, it only lasts for 4 hours after I wake up, and then sort of that band-aid that's been put on the issue rips off, and the brain's like, oh, you got to go back to sleep again. So yeah, it's really difficult. It's really difficult to manage this socially, emotionally, financially, for people with narcolepsy. For me in particular, 3 years on past diagnosis, I still only have 4 hours a day where I can be functional enough to feed myself, to shower, exercise. I don't have time after that to engage in any of my hobbies, to maintain relationships, because after 4 hours I have to be home. I can't think, oh yeah, tomorrow there's an event at 2 o'clock. If I'm waking up at 10, I'm starting to get really sleepy at 2. And if I've driven or if I've caught public transport or whatever, 9 times out of 10, I can't get home, and I either will have to fall asleep in a heap wherever I am, and it doesn't get better after that. It rarely gets better after that, so it's very limiting. Now, before diagnosis, I would push through that, but back then I didn't know how impaired I was. Now I do. It would be really irresponsible of me to try and push through that now. So it's really difficult. It's really isolating. It's something that, to manage well or to manage optimally, it requires that short period of time that you are awake, for you to spend all of that time to make sure the bare necessities are met, and usually all of that time will be spent on the bare necessities and nothing else. It's a lot easier if you have support and friends and family, but that requires a certain kind of understanding from them, which a lot of people unfortunately don't achieve, purely because it's an invisible condition, and no matter how clearly you communicate the ways in which it affects you and what you can and can't do, people still cannot relate to that feeling. So a lot of the time they come back to thinking about times in their life that they are tired, but what they fail to recognize and realize is that they can change that state by having a rest and feeling better later, or having a coffee or having some medication, and it gets better. Fortunately, that doesn't happen for people with narcolepsy. It rarely does. And yeah, that is where a lot of misunderstandings happen and breakdowns of relationships, because the person with narcolepsy doesn't feel understood. A lot of their needs aren't respected by the people closest to them, because it's almost like telling someone you can just think through it, you can think better about it, and it will improve. That's just that's coming from someone that doesn't experience narcolepsy. So it's very difficult to get the support, and your mental health, it really suffers. You feel alone a lot of the time, misunderstood. Times when you need to rest, family, friends calling you lazy because you're doing the thing that you have no choice about. But for some reason they think you do have a choice around that, and that's because it comes from their own experience. So it can be really soul destroying and isolating and yeah, and sad. And so hopefully if you are out there with narcolepsy and you're struggling with these symptoms, hopefully this video helps you to feel seen. I know for me, early on with diagnosis, I felt alone. I didn't know anyone that really understood. I didn't know if there were any other people out there that went through what I went through and who deal with it the way I do. But luckily I've come across a few people with videos and who have the right kind of information and are able to express themselves in a succinct way. It's really helped. So I just hope that this helps others out there who are struggling, who feel alone, because there really isn't a lot of sort of information about all of the ways this condition affects you physically, socially, emotionally. There's really only the symptoms that a sleep specialist will talk about, but in terms of how to manage this in your life, how to advocate for yourself, how to know if something that's going on with you is narcolepsy related or other. It's really difficult to know where to go and to know like what to trust. And so the most beneficial thing, and something I've seen a lot in the narcolepsy community, is people literally having to make groups and talk to other people with narcolepsy to sort of figure out how to manage their symptoms and how to manage the issues they're having, socially, emotionally, with relationships. So there's not a lot of like solid scientific data on that kind of stuff out there. So it's kind of like we have to, you get your diagnosis and you have to kind of figure out how to manage it on your own. And you don't have a doctor that said, this person may have mood swings because their brain is experiencing what it's like to not sleep for 72 hours. That's not written down. It's something you have to figure out yourself. So trying to explain that to family members and friends, if you don't know better or know that is, a cause, that's really difficult. you know. Had not another person with narcolepsy talked about this, or had it not been hidden in some scientific journals out there, a lot of people wouldn't know this, and a lot of people have their loved ones think that they're lazy, or, you know, if they are having a mood swing because they're tired, you know, those close people thinking that you're psycho, or, you know, you're not nice, but literally you're tired. You can't control those things, and that's really hard to communicate to family and friends if you aren't aware that it is a result of your condition. So yeah, there's a lot out there. I've done a lot of research. I've had to, and I've had to cross-reference and ask other people so that I could figure out, yeah, this is a narcolepsy thing and this isn't a narcolepsy thing. So it's helped me to, I guess, communicate a lot more clearly about the things I struggle with. And now that I know what is narcolepsy related and what isn't, in terms of sort of my interactions, the way I deal with things, I'm a lot better at communicating that to people that don't understand narcolepsy. Misunderstanding still happens, but at least for my own peace of mind, I know what is narcolepsy related and what isn't, because you know, the zombie-like personality I have when I'm having sleep attacks and when my symptoms are quite high was something that before diagnosis I associated with, you know, being the bad side of me. I didn't know that it was, you know, just happening when I was tired. I just thought you need to hide that part of yourself, and it's takes a lot of energy, and it's really difficult to keep that hidden all the time when you don't understand why. So yeah, anyway, I'm not making sense. You can kind of see my eyelids are starting to droop, which means that my sleep attacks are starting to come on. So I think I'll stop the video there. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it made sense. I didn't really think this video out very well. I just wanted to get it down. So yeah, thanks for listening.